We are working through question 15, which says let f of x be equal to this, and our domain is 2 to infinity, and they've also given us a point 5 and 7. So let's just quickly here, all this is telling us is that we have the point 5, 7 like that. All right, the next thing that we are told here is that the function g is the inverse function of f, and what we need to do is find when x is equal to 7, what is the derivative of the inverse going to be equal to? Which of these? Now, this question right here requires you to utilize a certain thing you just need to know, and that is that the derivative of the inverse is going to be equal to 1 over the derivative of the function of g of x, like this. And let me make this bracket a bit bigger, like that. That is what is requiring you to know. Now, we are trying to figure out g dash of x, which is just this. So it's g dash of 7 is equal to 1 over this is going to be g of 7 like that. Now the question is, what on earth is g of 7 going to be equal to? Well, if we know that the function, when that is 5, we're going to get 7 out, and g is simply my inverse, it's simply going to be a 5 out there. So that means I can rewrite this as this equals 1 over the derivative of f when x is equal to 5. And I can figure this out using my cas. All right. So we're now going to come to our cas. We're going to come here, and I'm just going to begin by defining what my function is going to be. So f of x is going to be equal to control this x squared minus 4x plus 2, like that. I now am going to go shift minus to get that. Now, if you look here, what I'm finding is the derivative when x is equal to 5. So I'm going to put 5 here. I'm not. I'm going to put f of x there. And now I'm going to go this, when x is equal to 5, I'm going to get 6 out. So that means I'm going to get 1 over 6 as my answer, and that is A. Okay, so I think the big problem people are going to have is they're going to be like, where on earth did this come from? I've never seen that in my life. Well, let me show you where that comes from. But before I do that, before I kind of give you a big rundown on where this comes from, let me show you another way of doing this question that does not require you to know this. What if you just did this instead? What if you took your f of x, which is that we have defined it, and what if we just found the inverse of it? So to do that, we're simply going to solve for when this is equal to y, when it's equal to x, like that, and we're going to solve it for y. That will get me the inverse. As you can see, we get two things out there, and the reason for that is if you can just for a moment visualize what my function f is going to look like, it's going to look like this. Now, we are only concerned with the domain from 2 to infinity. So analyze graph, minimum. This is 2 to infinity. So obviously, when we're given these two options, we are going to want the positive one, because when you can picture this one being the inverse of it, it's just going to be the positive version of it. So this one right here. So now we can go g of x, control equals, we just want this, that. And then I'm going to go shift minus that of g of x, that, when x is equal to 7, and this should be 1 over 6 as well. So that's another way to do it. So that's kind of going through the long way of you're given the function, we found the inverse, we differentiated it, we let x equal to 7, and we get our answer. Now that's doing it, like the question doesn't expect you to do it that way. The question expects you to do it this way. And the reason why I know that is because they give you that point right there. So the question is now, where on earth did I get this from? Where did this come from? So let's just spend some time talking about where I got this from. So if I just come over here for a moment, and let's just go through some things. So we're going to start off, and let me just draw a line here. If I tell you that we have f of x, right? And then I'm saying we're going to get the inverse of that, and we're going to let the inverse be g of x. If I now took my, let me think about this. If I took my function and I put inside of it the inverse what am I going to get out? I'm going to get x out. And let me just prove that to you for a moment. So what I'm saying here is that if I have x right here, so that's an ugly x, but it is an x. So I have x, and then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to come here, I'm going to come to f of x. So this right here is when I go from here to here. This is my f, which is this right here. Well, now if I find the inverse is simply going to take me back to x, which is this right here. This is my inverse, which we are also calling g as well. So that's all it's telling you. So if I put one inside the other, I just go back to x. Let me prove it to you another way. If I said f of x is equal to x squared, and therefore the inverse is going to be the square root of x, and now I took f, x squared, and I put my inverse inside of it, that's going to be that. What am I going to get out? I'm going to get x out. So that's just kind of what an inverse is. Okay, so now from that, if we just keep on moving now, if I took this and said, well, if I now, let me just move this a bit. If I now took the derivative of this, it should be equal to the derivative of this side, right? Because they're equal. And if I do that, on my left-hand side here, what I'm going to be doing is using my chain rule, which means I'm going to differentiate the outside, keep the inside the same, and then multiply that by the derivative of the inside, which will be this. And then the derivative of x is just going to be 1. So now from there, I can simply divide both sides by this, which is going to leave me with 1 over f dash of gx, like that. So as you can see here, the derivative of my inverse is going to be equal to 1 over the derivative of my function of g of x. And this right here is what we saw over there. Whew. So that's where it comes from. So this is finding the derivative of an inverse. We're utilizing the point they gave us to achieve that end, but I've also shown you another way to approach this that does not require you to know this. But I think it's really important for you to just slot that away in your brain for a rainy day. If we come now and we look at the examiner's report, this is question 15, and you can see that 55% of people got it. Now that's fairly high, and I think that's because a lot of people probably just relied on the second way I showed you, in which they found the inverse, then they differentiated and let x equal 7. The next one that people got, a lot of people thought it was B. Why did people think it was B? 5. Why on earth would they think it's 5? I think the reason why they thought it was 5 is because they read this and they went, well, f of 5 is equal to 7, this right here. And then they probably didn't take note of the fact that it's g prime of 7. So they just went, well, g of 7 is equal to 5, and then they went 5. So they just thought it was like a really straightforward inverse question, and they didn't consider the fact that we're considering derivatives. And yeah, the rest was pretty evenly split amongst the rest. So hopefully that made sense. A little bit of a tricky question, but overall, hopefully you now understand that. And I'll let you go and see you in another video.